Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is December 19th, 2021. You're now watching Real Talk with Ronnie live. So here on our show, we only do real talk, real news in real time. And I'm very happy to have you join us tonight. So, wow, we are a few days away from the most important day of the year. And you guessed it, my birthday. My birthday is on the 21st. So if all of you who are watching right now, if you feel the need to send me a birthday card, birthday presents, gift cards, anything, you can email me and I'll tell you where to send those items to. In other news, my second child, he is not born yet. He was scheduled to be born this past Wednesday on the 15th, but after much thought, my wife decided that she wants to try natural birth. So we canceled that C-section and now we're just waiting. So now it's a wait and see process. But while we wait, I'm very happy to bring to you my guest for tonight. He is a personal friend of mine, a mentor to me, and he also happens to be a great, great guy. His name is Frank Pallotta. Frank Pallotta ran for Congress in 2020. He was the GOP nominee for Congress in New Jersey for District 5. He did extremely well in that race. He came within 7 points of unseating the incumbent Josh Gottheimer. Now, to put into perspective, all right, in 2018, Josh Gottheimer won his race by 14 points. All right. So in 2020, though, you have to keep in mind in the midst of this pandemic and the first time that we had nationwide mail-in ballots, which was actually a chaotic process, Frank managed to pull within 7 points. All right. He halved the deficit from 2018 and he came within 7 points. And, now Frank is in the running again for Congress in 2022. He hopes to set up a rematch with Gottheimer. So let me bring on my great friend, Frank. Hello, Mr. Pallotta. How are you?
I'm well, Ronnie. How are you doing? Merry Christmas almost and happy birthday almost.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Frank, a lot has happened since I first met you, right? So, yeah. Just so everybody is clear, I first met Frank in, I want to say October of 2020, right? It was right before the 2020 race. That's when we first sat down for our first Real Talk with Ronnie, interview. And you were actually my first big guest. So I want to thank you for giving me that opportunity and for coming on. And since that first meeting, we've actually met a total of 3 times. Tonight will be our 4th interview, right? So we have managed to do what The Godfather couldn't do, right? The Godfather had 3, right? They had a trilogy. Tonight is our fourth show. So thank you, Frank, for coming on.
No, thank you. It's really great to be with you, Ronnie. And the shows get better, and I think the audience gets a lot more widespread and a lot more vast. So I'm glad to be a part of it. I almost feel like the version of Steve Martin, where I keep coming on, but as I said, Ronnie, it's fun to be around. It's a great way to get out, and I like your questions. I like what you do, so I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Frank. So, Frank, for the people that might be tuning in for the first time, why don't you give us a little background on Frank Pallotta?
Sure. Appreciate it. As you said, Ronnie, I heard earlier that you said I ran the 2020 race. We did come within 7 points, cutting the deficit from the prior campaign in half. It was important for me the first time to enter the race early enough to get to know the district. I've been living in Mahwah for 30 years in Bergen County. And when I looked at the backdrop, not just of the party, Ronnie, but specifically of District 5, I knew we needed better leadership. And I jumped in early enough in 2019 and immediately started to make my way around the entire district. This is a 4-county race. You've got most of it is Bergen County, but keep in mind, Sussex County represents a significant portion of not just the residents in the district, but a significant portion in the district of people who understand the issues that affect the entire district. Portions of Passaic are also in our district, 2 towns, and Warren County. So honestly, for the last 3 years, I've not stopped running. I am, as you know, I'm in Sussex, Warren, Passaic, and Bergen every day doing something, getting out. As I said, it's a 4-county race. And if you're not out there in all the counties every day looking at all the issues that affect everyone in the county, you shouldn't be running. So I'm in it. We're in it to win it. We think the backdrop in the district, the backdrop in the individual towns, and the backdrop of the country has really changed quite a bit in the last 10 or 12 months. And we think we're in a great position, not just to flip the House, Ronnie, but to take a substantial number of seats, a pretty substantial and convincing number of seats, to not just deliver the House to the Republican Party, but to send a clear message across the district to Republicans, Democrats, and unaffiliated alike that we're ready for a change, and I'm ready to be the person to represent that change, Ron.
Okay, great. And I just also want to say, I ran for a county commissioner this past year, right? And I wanted to personally thank you for, being my mentor and for helping me out in that race. So thank you very, very much.
Now you're welcome, Ronnie. When our team and the people that were in because you came into our campaign office, met you, you had a charm about you. You had a different view about what you thought it meant to win the district, to win that seat. You did a lot of homework about what the role was all about. But mostly you stuck to your core conservative Republican values, which I think a lot of candidates miss in this district and in this state. And I was very happy to stand with you in that race, Ronnie.
Thank you, Frank. Now, speaking of that last race, which just happened, right? What are your thoughts on it, on the overall race with governor, with everything else?
Sure. Well, look, I think I think Jack ran a great race. Jack created excitement that we haven't seen in a while in New Jersey in a couple years, and he got people out. You can see from the registrations that were going on that Jack created a level of excitement that got people out. We certainly didn't get the result we wanted out of Jack's race, but I think what we saw in terms of House seat, in terms of state seat flips, it was either 7 or 8 seats, both Assembly and the Senate, that we were able to flip.
Right.
I think Jack was in part responsible for at least a few of those seats. When you get people excited, Jack was up and down the state. I think he did a great job at getting himself out there and letting people know from the beginning this wasn't necessarily just about a gubernatorial election and a seat in Trenton. This was about making sure that we flipped as many seats as we can, because much like that we have where we have the minority for the Republican Party in the House, in the U.S. House, we're in the, for lack of a better phrase, the super minority in the Assembly. And,
right.
It's the first time in 30 years that we've taken back this many seats, and the first time in a very, very long time that we've had 2 consecutive years. As Jack had mentioned, in the Murphy midterms, we picked up seats. And in this race, we picked up, again, either 7 or 8 different seats. So I think we did a good job. No one expected people to come, much like in my race, didn't expect anybody to come that close within 7 percentage points. I don't think anyone expected Jack to come within the 2.5 to 3 that he came in. There's a lot of armchair quarterbacking that always goes on with races like this, and the RGA, if they came in earlier, would the results have been different? If the media reported the real polls instead of what we call top line polls, and not the second and third derivative polling, which tells you who's going to vote and what they're going to vote, maybe the results would have been different. But I do think there's excitement in the state, specifically from and I'll just talk from my standpoint, from a District 5 standpoint, we did pick up some seats at the municipal level. I don't think we picked up much in Sussex because we have every damn seat in Sussex anyway, as a Republican. I think they do a great job in Sussex and Warren, not just in rates, but we've talked about this, and you and I, Ronnie, have talked about the leadership in some of those western counties like Warren and Sussex, where You've got leadership out there that works every single day to make sure that they don't just win races, but that the next Democrat that hops in the race looks around and says, I'm not going to do this. We need a lot of that. In Passaic, for the first time in a long time, Peter Murphy was able to claim a commissioner seat for a Republican, which we haven't seen in a long time. So kudos to Peter and kudos to Passaic County and Joni and that team. In Bergen County, we did get some flips as well at the township level. It's important to recognize that there's a little bit of a pendulum swing, Ronnie. And, it started a little bit before Jack got in. I think Jack really drove it home. But rolling into 2022 and beyond, it feels like that pendulum is starting to swing back where the voters, particularly the unaffiliated, are looking for, principled core values that I think the Republican Party does stand behind.
Right. I believe during the Murphy midterms, he lost two seats, right, in the assembly. Yeah. And this time we obviously picked up like 6, right? Do you think there's anything that Jack or his campaign could have personally done differently to help him win, or what do you think?
Oh, you know what? I mean, I think we did a pretty good job, up around by us. I know that Kelly Hart was helping him out in Sussex, and he did real well in Sussex. He did real well in Bergen. I think Passaic killed it for him. I wasn't able to decipher a lot of what went on in Bergen County. In District 5, Jack won. And it's important to note here that Jack Chittarelli won in very difficult districts around New Jersey. I believe he won 5, 7, 11, 3. He might have won a few more that are held by Democrats right now. Could he have done anything different? You know what? I think only he and his team can do that. I mean, I went back after we lost last November, Ronnie, with our team, and you reverse engineer both wins and losses. And right. I would be surprised if Jack, being the businessman that he is, didn't go back and reverse engineer and try and figure out what he could have done better. I don't know. He's already talked about jumping in the race. I think that's good for him. I don't know what, if any, changes he'll try to make, but smart businessmen will always go back and rethink what they did right and want to do the rights better and the wrongs a lot less.
Okay. Now, just to move away from Jack, since that's the governor's race, and as you mentioned, he's running again in 25, right? So we will see what happens then. But yeah, I think that Jack did a lot for our party. He really helped with a lot of those flips, right? But talking about 5, right? So District 5 has traditionally been a Republican stronghold. I believe for most of the history of the state, District 5 has been a conservative and a red district. I think from 1933 on, there has always been a Republican congressperson, right, who represented that district up until 2016 when Gottheimer flipped it. And that's interesting, too, because in 2016, even though Gottheimer flipped that seat, it was still a district that was won by Trump, right? So what do you think it was about 2016 that, flipped District 5 blue? Was it that Josh Gottheimer was such an incredible candidate, or what do you think?
Look, I mean, winning and losing elections is about a few things, but whenever a seat changes or flips parties, you look to anger, you look to excitement, things like that. And congressional races are very local. I mean, they sound, granted it's a federal position, but when you talk about, Donald Trump and running for president, when it comes to voting at the congressional or at the local level, there's 435 districts in the country. You have to appeal to the people who are going to come out and vote. And, maybe there was something in Congressman Garrett that someone didn't like. It was a position he took or didn't take or wasn't enough about. But Josh was very good early on at projecting something that he wasn't. And that's important because when you're looking for leadership and somebody comes along and at least begins to portray that they have those leadership qualities, absent the other side really making a good case, Ronnie, that you need to stick home, you need to stick with the incumbent, could be your leader. After that, they may go with something else. And we've seen those pendulum swings. But I think people are beginning to realize that Josh is not what he advertises himself to be. We were in a really tough situation last year where people were focusing every single day on their job and putting food on their table and keeping a roof over their head and keeping relatives alive and safe. And they weren't paying so much attention to the issues. They are now. They're definitely doing it now. And that's why I'm excited about being in the race this time around, because we look at some of the issues, Ronnie, that were not big issues in 2006. Inflation wasn't a big deal. GDP growth wasn't a big deal. Unemployment wasn't a huge deal. So people weren't watching that. Every day now they're watching it. You know, we've seen gasoline up, 65 to 70% over the course of the last 11 months. We've seen unemployment kick up to a point where I think we're one of the highest in the nation. We might be, 2 or 2.5 percentage points higher than the national average. So there's things that people are going to recognize that they might not have been paying attention to in 2016, but it's my job to make sure that they understand it now, Ronnie.
Okay. Now, on your way to 2022, you have a few challengers for the primary, right? I believe a Sussex mayor, John Flora, the Sussex Regional Board of Education the president there, Nick D'Agostino, Nick Di Gregorio, who I believe used to work for your campaign, and Fred Schneiderman. I believe those are the current candidates who are also in the running for the nomination, right? Do you have any thoughts on your competition, and how do you plan on clearing the field and in getting this nomination in 22?
Look, I'm focused on one person right now, Josh Gottheimer. And I promise you, I'm the only one he's focused on as well. This is, it's a great country. A lot of people can throw their hat in the ring. But right now, you know what, Ronnie, Kelly and I make sure that we're focusing on that which we have control over. And that is our messaging and getting out and making sure that the people understand not only am I the best candidate in the field on the Republican side, but I'm the best candidate overall when it comes to election day 2022.
Okay.
And by the way, I don't think Fred Schneiderman is in. I've heard his name being thrown around. I haven't seen a filing. So I wanted to clear that up, unless it came out in the last 72 hours.
Right. Well, okay. Well, what did come out was that you recently, there was a press release that came out from your campaign saying that you've been endorsed by over 30 mayors. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. That's look, I'm excited. I don't think that many mayors out of this district have ever gotten behind one candidate this far ahead of an election. I mean, keep in mind, we're almost a year in front of an election. We're 7 months ahead of a primary, and nearly 30 mayors have looked at me and said, "Frank, you're our guy." And that's very humbling to me. I'm very happy. But as we talked about earlier, Ronnie, I see many of these mayors all the time. I don't just come out when it's election time. I don't pick up the phone and see what they're up to 3 months before an election. These mayors I go out to, we've talked about Carlos and John Glidden and DeMeo, and I've been out to Sussex and Warren County, and I've talked to these mayors a lot. Michelle Dale and I, took a dive into the river off a boat for some charity event recently. So I love getting out, Ronnie. Some of the mayors I asked, some of them called me and said, "This is what I want to do." It didn't take a lot of arm twisting. There were easy and open conversations with them, and they were only too happy to get involved. And we suspect, there's going to be more. There are a bunch of mayors. We did this in a very short period of time. I started to make a few phone calls, and they came back, and one after the other said, "I'm in, that's great." And then someone else would call me out of the blue. They just heard from another mayor who said, "I want to be part of this team, Frank. I want to be part of the movement." But it's mostly, Ronnie, not because I think they believe I'm the best candidate. I think they really and honestly believe that for the last 3 years, I've been visiting their townships. I've not just been visiting and speaking with the mayors. I've gotten involved with local races. I've been in Passaic County a number of times. I've walked and knocked doors with Board of Ed candidates, with council candidates. I've traveled to Sussex and did fundraisers with those candidates, and out in Warren County as well. I think the world of Nancy Brown, and as you know, Kelly Hart is the executive director in Sussex County, and their legislators are terrific. But when it comes to endorsements, I think New Jersey mayors and New Jersey legislators are smart enough to know it's not just about putting your name on a piece of paper. It's about believing the person on the other end of the phone, on the other side of the table, that this is the guy who I think is going to fight for me. And I think they know that in me, Ronnie, and that's what I want to do.
Okay. Now, as you and I both know, the redistricting process is happening now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Probably going on as we speak, right? What are your thoughts on that? Because how they, shape that field or shape the map can, affect the stated race, right?
Sure. Look, Ronnie, we think about that which we have control over. We have a great team. We have a good base team here in District 5. We've got a great team that we've assembled out in Washington, D.C. And I come from an industry where the numbers and the data make sense. We're considering all probabilities and all outcomes, and toward making sure that we're in the best possible position, irrespective of whatever outcome happens. So, we've got our own thoughts, but at the end of the day, we keep our head down, we push forward, and we make sure that we're in the best, most practical position when the decision comes down, which I think the drop dead date might be Jan 15, that they have to come up with something. But we'll be ready, Ronnie.
Okay, great. So I saw that you were at this event today. I believe it's the Veterans Holiday Appreciation Luncheon. It was at the Bergenfield Elks Lodge, right? In Bergenfield.
Yeah.
Would you like to talk more about this event? And I know that you've been heavily, you've been helping out the veterans a lot, right? So would you like to talk more about this event and on your work with the veterans?
Sure. Ronnie, I've always been an advocate for the veteran community. In fact, even before I got into politics, when I left my banking job, I did a startup, and my startup was specifically designed to help people who were struggling through the financial crisis. And we really found a great niche of people that we know needed help, and it was the veteran community. The veteran community, they're strong, they're brave, they're proud. And when I recognized that there was an opportunity to help them, and I knew they wouldn't be the ones asking for help, because veterans never ask for help. Veterans are the ones that are first to raise their hand to say, how can I help you? And through our analysis, we found out that there were some veterans that needed assistance. And we launched this program and saved about 10,000 veterans from losing their home. And it was something that was very personal to me, and it was very rewarding. We ended up winning a Time Magazine Award for the best invention of 2010 for exactly that program, Ronnie. And it's honestly one of the reasons I stepped into politics. And let me explain briefly why. There wasn't anyone in Washington that wanted to help the veterans the way I wanted to help them. I came up with a private sector program, and I went to the government, specifically people within the government community and in the veterans community, Veteran Affairs, the VA, and said, hey, I've got something here that I think will help out the veteran community, and I need your help to go through it. And look, like anything else, anything new is met with a little bit of skepticism, especially when the newness comes from the private sector and you're approaching the public sector. They looked at it, they liked it initially. We spent our own money, our startup, making sure that we can launch this thing to prove to Washington that it works. And it did work. And we launched it. And the VA came back to us. They saw the success that it had, Ronnie, and they were only too happy to get involved with us. We worked with the VA. We worked with Ginnie Mae. We worked with a number of very large banks in the U.S. And we launched the program widespread. Mostly it helped over 100,000 people overall, but I'm most proud of the specific group of veterans that we helped. The reason I thought it was significant to mention that was one of the reasons that I wanted to get involved in politics is what I really walked away from in addition to helping veterans was this concept that if you marry a private sector set of experiences in a bio with the public sector and you do it in the right way and you do it without looking to take credit or looking to pat yourself in the back, you can accomplish anything you want. And we didn't do this for political reasons. We did it because we thought it made sense. We never charged the veterans. We didn't make any money on it at all. We just thought it was the right thing to do. And when I divested myself startup, I wanted to jump into politics. I wanted to because I thought there was an opportunity for someone with a private sector background, which, Ronnie, I think is really, really important. There aren't enough real good private sector bios that are jumping into politics. And, people have said, well, you need a congressman who's signed both the front and the back of a paycheck. I agree with that, but it's something more. I've got more than 25 years in the private sector, experience in the private sector. It's important to have people in the private sector with that much experience because we've gone through many economic cycles, financial cycles, political cycles. And when you've been in the industry that long, any industry, legal industry or the financial industry like me, you don't stay in it that long, Ronnie, unless not only you're good at what you do, but you're able to adapt time and time and time again. There were too many politicians where their only job in their entire career, Josh Gottheimer being one of them, is in politics. He'll tell you that he went to Ford Motor or he went to Microsoft. He was in government relations at those firms. So it wasn't a lot. So, I do think the private sector experience makes a great deal of sense, Ronnie. And it's one of the things that I think is really important and one of the things I'm most proud of. And I get that feedback from people that I bring very practical solutions to what seems to be these log jams of political wrangling, and we do need more of that.
Right. Well, it's unique that we have a candidate for a house that was awarded from Time Magazine one of the 50 best inventions, right? So that's certainly a very, very cool thing.
Yeah.
So you might know that recently a Superior Court judge in New Jersey, she basically ruled that the recent chairman's race for Bergen County was not valid, right? She invalidated that race, and I believe there might be a new chairman's race for Bergen County GOP. Do you have any thoughts on that ruling?
No, I mean, Ronnie, I saw it. I saw what went down. I wasn't involved in the chairman or the county committee races last year when those decisions were made to cancel it and then reinstate it. But look, if there's one thing that I think is important going into not just this race, but any race across the country, transparency and voter integrity is a big deal. And it's something that we Republicans I think are pretty important. Obviously, we pound the table about transparency and voter integrity and voter ID and things like that, and locking down the time frame when vote by mail should happen or early voting should happen. So again, I didn't read through Judge Dela Cruz's entire decision, but the process, will certainly take root over the next, I guess it's six weeks or so. I think they meet on the 6th or the 11th or both, and we'll see where it goes. I mean, I'm as I said, I'm in a position here where I'm singularly focused on 2022 right now and Josh Gottheimer. So however things shake, I'm going to be pretty well prepared for it.
Okay, great. So after running in 2020, were there any lessons that you learned in the 2020 race and any mistakes that you want to correct? Like, what will you do differently in 2022, if anything?
Well, I am not going to hand you my plan, just so you know, Ronnie. Look, as I said earlier, in my industry, you reverse engineer wins and losses. Wins, You reverse engineer to see if you could have won by more, and losses to see if you could have lost by less. So we did do it. We made a lot of changes. On advertising, we don't talk about them. We've engaged a number of different groups to work with us going forward. We're happy with the changes we made. We specifically addressed not just within our group, but around what we think we needed to do. But we're pretty well prepared, Ronnie, moving into this, having addressed the issues that we think are critical to the district. But keep in mind, last year was a unique election. It was the first time we had mandatory vote by mail. No candidate was prepared for mandatory vote by mail. So having had that experience going through it, vote by mail is here to stay. It's not going to be mandatory vote by mail, but it's here to stay. And it's how you deal with, not just the fastball right down the pike, but it's how you deal with the curveball and the changeups as well. And we think we think we have a team that is perfectly suited heading into 2022, and we're ready to take this.
Okay. Perfect. Now, Frank.
Yes.
Assuming that you win the primary, you clear the field, you win the primary, and let's say you destroy Josh Gottheimer in the general election. What are the top three things that you want to accomplish when you get to Congress?
Well, look, first and foremost, I wouldn't say first and foremost. Right now, and it's becoming a little more obvious to some of our voters now, the Northeast is in need of infrastructure. The Gateway Tunnel and some of the bridges and roads that we have around this district are in tremendous disrepair. We're a single seismic, even a small seismic event of shutting down New York, cutting New York off from New Jersey. So I think infrastructure is a big deal. The problem we had with this bill that Josh Gottheimer and his gaggle of Democrat congressmen tried to push through is that I think the true infrastructure need that we have is somewhere in the neighborhood of $285 to $330 billion. This was a $1.2 trillion bill that got bumped up to 1.8. It's the very definition of pork. It's the very definition of backroom deals to try and do what's in the best interest, in the best personal interest of the congressman, instead of what's in the best interest of the district. So I think first and foremost, we need to look at a strategy that addresses infrastructure. I think there needs to be some comfort around, and the Gateway Tunnel bill has been, I think, on people's agenda for a while. But I think there needs to be some truing up in terms of where the jobs and the revenues come from when all things are said and done. Because if it's between New York and New Jersey, I think there needs to be a commensurate split between those two states. So it's important to see that. So infrastructure is a big deal. I think working with Trenton to try and lower taxes. People talk about salt and that being an issue. There's a lot of things that can be discussed around salt, but first and foremost, salt wouldn't be as big a deal if we had lower taxes. And that's something that sits with Murphy. And honestly, it's something that sits with every Democrat congressman in the state. It's not just about Josh saying to me, and he said it to me once in a debate, he's like, well, that's not my job. It's up to the governor. No, it is your job, Congressman. It is your job to make sure that the people you were elected to serve are served in the best possible fashion. And if that means you've got to go bang on this guy's door down in Trenton, the governor, and tell him what you think is important, you do it. He's proposing more than $5.5 trillion in taxes, and he's claiming he's going to help you by giving you your salt cap or by removing the salt cap or a portion of the salt cap. What he's effectively doing is trying to put $5 in one pocket and taking $25 out of the other pocket. That's what he's doing. People aren't paying attention to the fact that while he's pushing for salt, he's also pushing for the largest tax increase this country has seen in a half a century. So people need to understand you need, Ronnie, fiscal responsibility in this country right now today. We're still coming out of the ravages of this pandemic. New Jersey still has a terrible unemployment situation. We still have businesses that are on the brink of collapse a year and a half after the pandemic started. So I think the other thing that's important to do, Ronnie, is make sure that the people of this district know from me, I will fight for them. I will make sure that we look at mandates hard. We look at shutdowns hard. And we're not doing it because the governor wants to do it, but we're doing it because the science makes sense. And when you look at states like Florida and other red states that have looked at the virus as something that's very serious, but they make their decisions about lockdowns and mandates in a very structured and scientific way, those states have higher growth. Those states have lower unemployment. The science that Murphy talks about is not science. It's his own agenda. The science are, what are the results you're seeing from other states around the country and what they're doing and how they're addressing the pandemic. So addressing health issues, I think, is important. Addressing the high taxes that we have in New Jersey is critically important. Infrastructure is important. And finally, and this is a very big deal, and this is near and dear to me, in addition to being an advocate for the veteran community, Ronnie, our campaign has been a Back the Blue campaign from day one. No other campaign has done as much work with the police as Pallotta for Congress. Josh Gottheimer didn't just vote for the defund the police bill. Josh Gottheimer wrote the defund the police bill. So for all the times he runs around and tells you he's for the police and the Fraternal Order of Police is behind him, he wrote the bill to defund the police. I won the police vote in New Jersey in District 5 last year by a substantial margin for that reason. Josh Gottheimer lost the endorsement of the New Jersey PBA because very simply, he wrote the bill to fund the police. He owns the defund the police actions. And while it didn't pass at the end of the day, Josh Gottheimer owned it. He owns, it's almost like, robbing a bank and walking out and saying, well, I didn't rob the bank because there wasn't any money, or I didn't use a gun, or you owned it. You went in there with the intent to rob the bank. Josh Gottheimer went into the defund the police discussion with the full intention of defunding the police. And he owns that. And, it's something that we're adamant about here in our campaign from the very beginning. In addition to being supportive of veterans, we're supportive of our men and women in blue.
Right. And I thank you for that. And when you say that Josh Gottheimer wrote this bill, he actually literally wrote the bill, right? He was one of the co-sponsors, right?
He was one of the co-sponsors, Ronnie. That's correct.
Okay. Well, Frank,
and he's very clever. He's very clever at saying in another debate, well, I don't see the word defund anywhere in the bill. Well, Democrats are really, really good at two things: calling things what they're not, and using, a seventh grade thesaurus to try and change the words around. Yes, the word defund isn't in the bill, but there's 6 or 7 different synonyms for defund, where they're withholding money, they're holding money hostage or ransom until something is performed. There are reforms in every single industry across this entire nation. Every single day you have to look at reform, whether it's legal, financial, police, anything you have. But when you specifically target something like qualified immunity for our police, you don't just take away their protections, you take away the protections of their family. And Josh did not do that when he co-sponsored that bill.
That's right. Frank, do you have any last parting words you'd like to say to our audience before we let you go on this Sunday night?
Oh, now, Ronnie, look, I want to thank you again for this opportunity. We've really started to pick up steam recently. I think folks in this district have really begun to understand what our campaign is all about. We bring substantial private sector experience to the table, which is what I think we really need here. Like I said, Josh Gottheimer, he's never had a private sector job in his career. Josh is worried about his next step. Josh is worried about having his name up in lights. Any candidate who wants to put their name up there just to see their name up there, and you can tell who those candidates are, shouldn't be running. You really need to make sure that you look within yourself and you look within your resume and your bio and you look at what's needed in your district. And if you have what it takes, if you've got the internal fortitude to do this, and you've got a bio and a resume that's consistent with what's important in the district, you do it. And that's what I'm doing. And, as you and I said earlier, I never stopped running. We rolled from, last November's loss into a veteran coat drive. We rolled into a drive for a battered women's shelter that we helped them. We rolled into a lot of different things that I think are important to our district. And people have seen me all the time. We're going to hit this thing. We're going to continue to hit this thing hard, Ronnie. I think people need to understand I will fight for them more than anybody else who's run. I've raised my family in this district. I've spent 31 years in Bergen County. I am beholden to no one. I'm beholden to no one. And that's really important to understand. I've gone against leadership. I've gone with leadership. I talk about what I believe is right for the people that I will serve. And they get that. I don't need the jobs that are being thrown around. I don't need, what people are saying. If you do this, maybe we'll do that for you. It's one job. It's one focus. The people of the district, really what I'm looking to do. And people understand. I hope people will walk away understanding it's not, necessarily, even though it's an election, it's not a popularity contest. You're not voting for class president. You're voting for somebody to spend 2 weeks in this district and 2 weeks in DC every month. And the main focus is going to be you listen to what happens in your district and you vote consistent with what you're hearing in your district in DC during those other 2 weeks. So again, I've had a great career in the private sector, and I'm ready to take that career in the private sector and translate into something that works for the 734,285 people in Congressional District 5.
Right. Well, I think you said something before that was really, crucial. That the fact that you're beholden to no one, right? Because at the end of the day, the job of the public servant is to serve the public, and the only people that a public servant should be, beholden to is the public, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. We have a comment here. Actually, a few comments here. One from Bezo.
Uh-oh.
Hi guys, my friends. Have a Merry Christmas. Well, Merry Christmas to you too, Bezo. We got another comment here
Bezo's
from
great.
John. Yep, from John Azariti, great councilman from Saddle River. Great show as always. Two of the most handsome guys on the Sunday talk shows today. John, thank you, and I wholeheartedly agree with you.
John ran an amazing race. John is one of these people as well, and thank you. I know you were talking more about Ron Lynn than you were about me, John, but thank you. But, when I saw John running for assembly, John really, really connects with the people. He brings, obviously, during a tough time during a pandemic, he brought to the forefront what I thought people were very, very interested in is somebody whose resume fit what was going on. But John's also a small business owner. John is a good and decent man with a great family. And, I hope he throws his hat in the ring for something soon because I'll be right there with him.
Yeah, John is a great personal friend. And he's an anesthesiologist. But I think, what we don't know about John is that he's actually a professional chef. If you look on his Facebook post, right?
He is. I'm jealous of some of the dishes that he comes up with. But, he and I may have a cook-off with our families one of these days soon.
Well, if you guys do have a cook-off, make sure that I get an invite.
Absolutely. I've seen you eat, Ronnie. You will definitely get an invite.
Thank you, Frank. All right, Frank. Do you have any Christmas plans? Any vacation plans going forward?
Oh gosh, you know what? My boys are both they're 26 and 28, and they're heading back over the next week or so to spend time with Patty and I over the Christmas holiday season. We're going to stay local here. I think when the boys head back to their homestead, I'll probably look to grab, some time away for a couple days before we head into this grind. And I think, me, even if I went away for, 4 days, I'll probably spend 3.5 of them logged on and looking to do stuff. Look, if it's up to Kelly Hart, you run a campaign 24/7, 365 days a year. But we're going to stay local, Ronnie, and I'll be around if you need me to help with the delivery or babysitting. Okay, I'm all ready to help you guys.
All right, great. It's good to know that my son already has a godfather, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, Frank, I've thrown up the website for your campaign here, pallottaforcongress.com. So I want to thank you for joining me tonight on Sunday night. As we all know, Sunday night is not just for families, it's for Real Talk with Ronnie. And I want to thank you, Frank, for coming on.
No, I appreciate it, Ronnie. Thank you again. And can't wait to do Real Time Part 5.
All right. Perfect. Part 5. All right. Thank you, Frank. Have a great
All
night. Have
right.
a Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. And we'll talk to you very soon. Okay.
Thanks so much, Ronnie. Be well. Thank you.
Okay. Bye bye. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was my interview with Frank Pallotta. What a great guy. And like he said, 30 years, over 30 years of private sector experience. He's bringing that experience to the campaign trail, and we wish his campaign the best of luck. If you want to check out more about Frank and his campaign and his, his campaign, his platform and everything else, you can go to pallottaforcongress.com. On his website, there are ways that you can contact his campaign if you want to get involved, if you want to help out, or I'm sure if you want to donate. I'm sure Frank's not going to say no. So, so pallottaforcongress.com. Okay, guys. And of course, guys, we will be back next week, the 26th, the day after Christmas. Okay. Here, 8 p.m. live on Facebook and also on our YouTube channel. If you have an interesting story to share, if you want to come on, you can email us at realtalkwithronnie@gmail.com. Okay, guys. Well, guys, it's that time again. It's time for us to bid farewell until we see each other next weekend. I'm hoping that by next weekend, my child should be born. If he's not born, then we will continue waiting. But it's good to know that now we have, Godfather Frank, who has offered his services to babysit, and it's on air. So if he ever tries to get out of that, we have, proof of him saying that. From Bezo, did your wife give birth? No, Bezo, my wife has not given birth yet. She was scheduled for a C-section on the 15th, but we decided to go with the natural birth. So now we're just wait and see. All right. But don't worry. As soon as the baby is born, I will give you guys an update. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you are watching Real Talk with Ronnie live. I'm Ronald Joseph Lynn. I want to thank you for spending your Sunday night with me. I wish you all a very, very Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and I will see you all next Sunday. All right? Bye-bye.